Hello and welcome back to Let's Play Tyranny with me, Bring It On. So we got a response from Fatebinder Rogulus. Dear Fatebinder Donald, rarely in my life have I experienced relief to the extent that your missive inspired. No other action you have taken to this point, incredible as many of them have been, has impressed me so thoroughly. The vagueness of the better uses of which you spoke could concern one with less faith in your judgment. Once the Civil War concludes, you and I shall have to study the archive thoroughly so as to determine what aspects of it can be saved, which must be purged under the law. Fatebinder Rogulus. See, that's a fair argument. Don't just destroy all the knowledge. Just destroy what you have to.
Remember years back when I told you justice is just the name for the biggest sword in the realm? Claiming the Dauntless is part of establishing your own might, your own authority. Even if you dislike its heft, I'd advise you to keep the blade close. It has symbolic value beyond its martial applications. Of course, any authority you may be carving for yourself is sanctioned only with the understanding that it's for the greater glory of Kyros.
So I definitely imagine him to have a deeper voice than that. Because the first time we spoke to him, he wasn't voice acted. How about a little breathing room, kid? Alright, fine. I will talk to you. Lady Lucretius. Fatebinder, we have nothing further to discuss. Alright, let's talk to the Scarlet Chorus representatives. Cutting down the enemy can be fun, but bringing them into the fold is more satisfying. He ignores you with a stern and distant expression. A curious man, this Tunon. Age has not made him nihilistic as the voice of Nerat. I'll speak to the disfavored, then to our Fatebinder, cohorts, compatriots, peers. Didn't think I'd make it out of that pass alive. You've done well for the Legion. Oh, that's Aurora from the very first area. Sevius. Anything beats a prolonged siege. Eh, Fatebinder? Enjoy the war while you can. Then Albitronus. Hail Ash and Kyros. We speak again, so let us speak genuinely and at length with one another. Now, of what matter would you have us discuss? The Fatebinder rubs his fingers along the edge of his jaw, regarding you with interest. Come, let us speak freely. I have nothing to talk to you about. Callio? Regards, Donald. You look as if you need something. Callio tips her head to one side, a glimmer of curiosity in her dark, discerning eyes. What can I do for you? Callio touches a gentle hand to your shoulder. You wrote that you could illuminate the darker corners of Tyranus. She glances at your cotter. In a private missive, yes. There are things I won't discuss within the hearing of outside ears. Address your followers. I need to speak to the Fatebinder privately. I suppose not every conversation need be recorded. The sage shuffles away. The hulking man shrugs. As you wish. He takes up a position outside of hearing range, standing just shy of at attention. Suit yourself. She moves slightly away, footsteps soundless on the marble floor. A sly smile dimples her left cheek. I confess to no small amount of curiosity. I peek into my share of shadows, and sometimes I scrounge up a secret. What excites your interest? I like to discuss the Archons and their forces. Entirely understandable given the circumstances. How can I enlighten you? Why are the disfavored so obsessed with their breeding? She chuckles. Stabbing straight at the heart of it, are we? The short answer is Graven Ash and the entire tribal culture that he martyred himself to defend. That tribalism is clearly part of their strength, if not how they're bound to the Archon of War. Of course, such sentiments undermine attempts at occupying the tiers. She lowers her voice further. Were it not for fear of the court, I wonder if he'd eliminate every last tiersman to establish his version of order. She straightens, crossing her arms. If you want to speak at length about the disfavored as a military force, though, I'd recommend Fatebinder Nunaval, or Ash himself. Or you could always ask your friend in the bronze shell. Is there any legal legitimacy to Graven Ash's claim over the Blade Grave, and the voice of Nerat's over the Stone Sea? That's a complicated issue. Legally, the tiers haven't been brought entirely into the fold as part of Kyros' dominion. Until they aren't fully subject to the Overlord's laws, which means that they are open to be claimed by whoever has the strength of arms to hold them. In theory, once the area has been pacified, the Overlord could carve it up and parcel it out. In practice, Kyros tends to grant governorships to those who took the land. This is how the Overlord has made many of his most substantial gains. He offers Archons the choice of to either carve out a kingdom or roll over or die, or to roll over or die. Many find that an easy choice to make. But again, that is a gross oversimplification. One could pursue the horizon for months without seeing all the lands under the Overlord's sway. Ultimately, Kyros is pragmatic and establishes rule as best befits a territory. How much control do the Archons have over the territory they're granted? How long are you staying in Bastard City? There are as many answers to that question as there are Archons. Leadership has always been a matter of personal style. The way you guide recruits differ historically from how Rogueless commands his scribes, or Nunaval drills his retainers. The same holds for our Archons. The Adjudicator's court bears little resemblance to Iron Hearth, for example, and less to Cacophony. The Overlord codifies this as the right of privilege. So long as an Archon remains loyal to the Overlord and upholds a legal code, Kyros grants them significant freedom to rule their dominion as they see fit. As a result, some territories seem wildly different from others. They say that were you to travel the length of Taratus, you'd find yourself in a different empire every span. Only the Overlord's law unites them. In a way, our code, our court, is the blood coursing through the Empire's veins. We're the order that makes civilization possible. I've heard tell that over time, an Archon's relationship to their territory can grow deeper than we can imagine. The line between them and their land blurs. Rogueless is partial to the story of Miramis of the Mire. Look at Cairn in the Stone Sea. Lingering edicts aren't exactly rare, and they shape the lands even as the Archon administrators do, and even as the lands shape the Archons. Taken together, it's all rather muddled. Why do the Archons have such unusual names? Is yours so typical? She asks, palms offered, followed by a shrug. Tunon claims that his name has always been Tunon, much as he expects us to carry out our service without resorting to sobriquets, or pseudonyms. Archon of War was only Ash before Kyros added the Graven. And Cairn, she lapses into momentary considered silence. I've always suspected that was the Overlord's private joke. She shakes her head as if rattling the idea free. Suffice it to say, when you've drawn that much attention, you're called what the Overlord calls you. And that's enough about the Archons. What next then, my curious friend? I want to ask you about the rest of Taratus. I've done more than a little traveling in my role as Tunon's agent. What would you know? Besides those in the tiers, what armies does Kyros have? That varies depending on the needs of the Empire at any given time. Right now, with the conquest of the tiers ongoing, the Archons of War and Secrets have been given leave to aggressively recruit and field massive armies. Nunaval told me that the Scarlet Chorus is one of the largest gangs of miscreants to have served a single commander in recent history. Archon Ash is disfavored, boasts better weapons and tighter tactics than most other forces in the Overlord's dominion can field. Tunon rules the Northern Empire, and while he's at war, his lands are guarded by the Archons of Sorrow and Ruin, as well as the Archons of Frost, unless one of the sisters turn on the others. They are not on a conquest sanctioned by the Overlord, but they maintain personal armies, even in times of relative peace. And beyond that, the Overlord has dozens of Archons, most with their own lands, armies, and magical guilds. I've not traveled the entire world myself, but I've heard everything from phalanxes of living bronze to nearly naked archers who herd swarms of spiders into battle. I'll let you determine how much credence you give them. She grins. I'm partial to the spiders myself. What do you know about how I came to the court's attention? Missing the comforts of home, are we? Callio teases. How rare it is for a Fatebinder to come from such a privilege. I half suspected you'd be executed with the whole family, but the Adjudicator took a shine to you. Considering your life was all but forfeit, good on you for making an excellent first impression. What about your past? How did you become a Fatebinder? Oh, I promise you, no story is more boring than that old yarn. I insist. You know my history. Let's hear yours. You've heard it 100 times. Girl meets boy, boy plots treason, boy is dragged in front of the Archon of Justice, girl argues for his freedom, Archon of Justice executes boy anyway, but offers girl a job. Girl realizes she's much better off a Fatebinder than a deceased dissident. Is any of that true? She chuckles. The very last bit, anyway. I keep hearing the terms Northern Empire and Northern Kingdom used interchangeably. That's not exactly a question, but I understand the confusion. Simply put, the Northern Empire was the Northern Empire before Kyros claimed it. Both names refer to the same rough geographical area from whence Archon Graven Ash hails. The difference in nomenclature is to distinguish when in history one is discussing. Do you know any legends from the rest of Tyranny? The Fatebinder frowns. That can be a dangerous question, Donald. If you're asking after stories of Archons, great warriors, or those who defied the Overlord, I direct you to Rogulis or Archon Tunon. Maybe even the Voices of Marat, if you can stomach the company. Or I'm sure your pet sage would be happy to enlighten you. I can't imagine why else you might shelter him, if not for his historical commentary. If you seek the superstitious drivel that kingdoms tend to cling to before the Overlord comes to sweep it away in favor of order and reason, well, Kyros forbids the knowledge for a reason. I recommend against the pursuit of folklore and general principle. Alright, enough about Tyranny. I thought you might have an interesting take on matters arcane. And you came to me, she chuckles. Don't let the Fatebinder of lore know. He'll never forgive you. What answers do you seek? What do you know about sigils and their casting? I'm a practical magician, not a theorist. If you're looking for the whys of magic, I direct you to Rogulis. You know, I'm sure, that sigils are derived from the personal marks of the Archons. My understanding is that it goes a bit deeper than that there's something of a question about whether the Archons are stamping their will indelibly on Tyranny, or unearthing some hitherto unknown aspect of magic and giving shape to it. It is one of those questions that serve little pragmatic purpose. Some Archons, like Occulted Jade of the Tidecasters, teach their sigils to followers, building a group of supporters. Other times, as in the case of Siren, the sigil is developed by those studying the Archon's works. In many cases, Archon Cairns for instance, it's a little of both. Most guilds guard their secrets closely, but secrets have a way of slipping free. The old sigils can be uncovered by those who know where to look, hidden within scrolls squirreled away in libraries, or even at the larger markets. Why have we not been taught the sigils of Tunon or Blood and Mark? Notice that, did you? She grins. I wouldn't presume to speculate on the Archon's motives, nor would I encourage you to. Quite the opposite, in fact. She taps her lip. It's probably for the best, honestly. The Court of Fatebinders elicit enough fear among the citizenry, and envy among the Archons as is. More power could very well make our work more difficult, rather than less. Do you know anything of the movement of the celestial sphere? She tucks a strand of hair behind her right ear. I'm no astrologist, but I have the basics. There are the stars, which seem set in the firmament to the eye, yet shift with the seasons. They serve as a constant source of superstition among those who have yet to come under the Overlord's rule. They speak of the constellations as ascended archons and mythic monsters. She grins. All very illegal. The Overlord has dictated the proper names for the asterisms and the correct method in which to interpret their movements. Tyranny's grave, of course, dominates the night sky, locked in place above us as interlopers slip silently from horizon to horizon each night. But everyone knows about them. A Tidecaster might be able to tell you more, were one willing to speak openly. Other phenomena exist, of course, matters less well understood. The comets, planets, and aurora. She shrugs. All beautiful and silent, useful in navigation and time measurement, and for the pale light they provide, but very little else. That's all my questions about the arcane for now. I like to pick your brain regarding lore historical. I can't claim to be a greater expert than Fatebinder Rogulis, but I'll happily offer my perspective. How long has Kyros' conquest been going on anyway? You've been with us since the conquest of the Tiers began 4 years ago. I assume you mean the greater unification of Tyranny. She glances towards the Adjudicator. Longer than any save for the Overlord and a handful of the Archons have been alive. Look to the calendar of true reckoning if you want the official answer. But between you and me, I think that's at best a starting point. Add a century, maybe 2 or more. I gather it's been a very long, very slow campaign, with the Overlord taking time to fortify and establish the Empire in each new conquered land before moving to the next. It also gives the next target time to let down its guard. The Overlord waited a full century between forcing Graven Ash to bend the knee and directing him against the Tiers. Long enough easily to lull the Tiersmen into a sense of false security behind their mountains. Is there anything you can tell me about the Sages? Fibina Rogulis audibly harumphs before turning his back on the conversation. She chuckles. Besides the obvious antipathy that our compatriot holds for them, the School of Ink and Quill were an interesting bunch. Not wildly different from our own order, in my opinion. Like us, they observe and study, seek knowledge and arcane power, and cultivate some of the less obvious skills that aid in those endeavors. Sages often know as well how to pick a lock or slip undetected through a manner as they know how to craft a missive or weave a cantrip. Had they not been so freaking selfish and short-sighted, they might have made admirable allies to our cause. Asai escapes her. The School of Ink and Quill were but the last of the guilds, or schools, as the tiersmen call their guilds, dedicated to recording their own little histories. Over the centuries, these local historians each met the advance of the Overlord. Some joined us, others perished, and all now know Kyros' history. How do missives work exactly? Someone writes letters on a page, someone else reads them. Information passes between them. She smirks. Clever. Thank you, she bows. I try to keep my tongue sharp. If you're asking how missives get from one place to another, the short answer is a combination of birds and couriers. Many cities and strongholds keep an aviary, along with birds trained to ferry messages between specific locations. I don't know the details of that training, though I understand that it's very rewarding. She smiles. Maybe something to take up if I live long enough to retire. Well, surely birds can't get everywhere. When birds won't do, either because the recipient has no aviary or is on the road or at the lines, couriers run the missives from the nearest aviary to the communique's intended recipient. This is all assuming missives that aren't overly sensitive. Some missives must be hand-delivered by trusted agents, something I've been tasked with more than once. Early in the conquest of the tiers, the sages were tapped for similar duties. The sages and some of the other magical guilds use birds especially prepared with rituals that allow them to find the intended recipient of a missive regardless of where they are in the tiers. All of this, though, is specific to the corner of the world. Have you ever met Fatebinder Meothis? She laughs. That old loon? Her eyes flicker to Tunon, then to Rogulis, and finally settle back on you. Sure, she's read an edict, maybe two in her time. Left her a bit rattled, I think. She's largely retired from active service, resting on accomplishments past while ensconced in the wealth that one can accrue as an agent of the court. Guess I half assumed she died already. She was dispensing justice back in the last conquest, so she must be over 100 by now. She slips into silence, considering. Because Archons live a long time too, so that's interesting. Unless somehow, like, Kyros' magic rubbed off on her. Well, that's quite enough history for the moment. Plus, I don't think Meothis told us she read edicts. I hoped I might get your perspective on the Overlord. A dangerous interest. What questions plague you? What exactly is an edict? How is it that we can issue one for the Overlord? You've issued and broken them yourself. You felt that power. What do you think it was? I mean, based on the descriptions, I would say... Yeah, the words, because the words are going into my mind, right? So the words contain tremendous power within themselves. So if you had the edict again, the same combination of words, you think would work again? I don't see why not. Have you noticed any lingering effects? I can't remember the last time the air felt truly still around me. She nods, scrutinizing your features, but says nothing in response. What edicts have you read? Most recently, the Edict of Stone against Cairn last year. Oh, well, she's read one too, never mind. She brushes her lower lip with her fingertip. Each word I spoke shook the land, drawing moisture from me. I felt Cairn's presence as he raged through the soldiers dispatched to stop him, and I felt him weakening under my onslaught. Under the Overlord's rather. Not that I'm convinced that division existed. In that moment, I was Kyros' mouthpiece, Kyros' tool. She shakes her head. I still wake with crust in my eyes. Even freshly laundered, my clothes bear a thin layer of dust. What do you think is Kyros' end goal in all of this? To win, I suspect. What form that takes, I can make some guesses, but that's all they are. Thus far, the Overlord has always had some new front to set soldiers against. Some new land to conquer, an opponent to villainize. What's left when the entire world falls under your control? Do you start melting down swords into plows, and devote yourself to developing the society you wanted to establish when you first set yourself to war? Do you seek out dissenters and make them the new enemy? Or do you manufacture enemies from those most likely to challenge you? As if any of these choices excludes the others. I don't pretend to know the Overlord's mind on this. I can only guess that it will be an interesting time. I have nothing more to ask about the Overlord. That's all I wanted to know for now. She nods. Feel free to return if you have further inquiries during the course of your little tour around the tiers. A Fate Binder. You return. Regulus looks you up and down with an inscrutable expression. Oh, no. Alright. Nothing new there.
Will do.
To Tunon.
On it.
You return as summoned, despite the weight of responsibility on your shoulders. The court appreciates your devotion to our good work. It should come as no surprise that your activities are closely monitored. As an extension of Kyros' law in the frontier, your progress is a topic of some interest. I sent you on a mission to bring order to the chaos of this civil war. Not enough time has passed for me to expect any significant progress, but I am curious about your findings all the same. I want to make sure your time outside the court's shadow is being used effectively.
Tunon pauses to... Excuse me. Tunon pauses to regard you with an intense stare.
I understand that you've made a name for yourself in the ranks of the disfavored. Good. With the confidence of his soldiers, you should have no trouble rooting out corruption or chaos in Graven Ash's elite legion.
Yeah, I'm happy to be an asset to Kyros' forces, and to pull chaos out by the root.
That is all this court has ever demanded of you. You do well to recall your duties with such exacting precision. You have spent some time on your own recognizance. The efforts of our military and the challenges they face should be no mystery to you. Tell me, are you any closer to determining which of the Archons is at fault for the troubles of this campaign?
So, we have more evidence against Graven Ash, but it's all like minor stuff, like incompetency and stuff like that. I don't think that's severe enough to deem him guilty. The Voice of Nerat has been actively sabotaging efforts, been trading or giving supplies to the Oathbreakers and the rebels, torturing disfavored, things like that. Like, he's actively sabotaging the conquest. So there's no question. The Voice of Nerat is guilty of inciting chaos.
Interesting. On what grounds do you make this claim?
The Voice of Nerat gave disfavored battle plans to the stalwart defenders. The Adjudicator weighs your statement with interest. The space between the eyes of his mask narrows, though the change is too gradual for you to follow.
Material evidence is hallowed to the court. I respect your diligence in collecting it, Fatebinder. You bring hope to my ambitions of bringing order to this divisive campaign. Be sure that you remember this and any other evidence you identify when you are called upon to present your findings in a more formal manner. I look forward to receiving your full report. I will summon you again at the appropriate time. If there's nothing further, you're dismissed.
I have some questions first. Never mind, no questions. I assumed I was going to give him all the evidence that I had collected, but I guess we're saving that for the official trial. At least he knows I'm doing good work. Now, if only I start getting paid for my for my job, for my services, that'd be great. All right. I guess we can head straight to Jagged Maw Shrine. I don't think enough time has passed. Tower. Oh, here it is. We haven't gained any experience either. So, all right, to Jagged Maw Shrine. Jagged Maw is a well-trafficked area, close to the outskirts of the region and a short distance from the region's few settlements. Beastmen have been fascinated with the area since Cairn's fall and the formation of the Stone Sea, believing the unusual rock formations to be tied to the dying Archon they revere. The heavy human presence here has driven them off, which has only increased tensions between them and local settlers. That reminds me, I need to go get the Kills in Shadow. Supposedly Beastmen are an issue over here. Which is a shame, because I'm really enjoying Versa my party right now. Like, her capstone ability is just so powerful. Like, way better than Kills in Shadow. So Kills in Shadow, it's basically the same thing. But Kills in Shadow doesn't seem to hit as hard, and it's a single target, where Versus is, can hit a whole bunch of people. Yeah, so... Either way, we're going to bring her along just for,
Fate binder.
any sort of conversation stuff she might bring up.
Goodbye to you too.
I do hate to say bye to Verse, though. Alright, let's level up. Kills in Shadow. As a primal screen roars at target in a cone, frightening them. This ability is used from stealth, foes will be terrified instead. And Shadow of Death significantly increases critical hit damage dealt by leaping death and grants a bonus to damage afterwards that lasts until combat ends. She's almost maxed out this tree. Alright, either way. Let's boogie on over here.
Right. Can't do that.
Let me... Here we go. No, that's right. Alright. Can't talk to these guys, that's fine. The Stone Sea environment is harsh and unforgiving. Arid plant life is about all that can survive in these parts. No, don't do that yet. Strange formation. This rocky protrusion is magical in origin. As Cairn roamed the Stone Sea during the Conquest, it was rumored that structures like these were formed in his wake and contained traces of his essence. Touch the monument. Place your hands on the monument to learn the spell symbol of stone. Which, yeah, we already knew that.
I got it.
So that's interesting. So we saw this at the Burning Library as well. And the same thing when we were in the Bastard's Wound, that rock formation that Siren was interested in. Which makes sense because he was there. Cairn was the reason why the Bastard's Wound exists. But I don't know if he was at the Burning Library. But when you're in that entrance area to the Burning Library to the north, across like that river of lava, there was an emblem like this. Obviously, it was molten looking, and it was made out of fire and stone, but still. I don't remember any mention of Cairn being at the Burning Library. So that's interesting. Either way, I'm going to call the episode here. In the next one, we'll go speak to Kyros, Arcadis, and Radix Ironcore. Or Radix Ironcore, I don't know where the emphasis is on those vowels. And continue through Jagged Moss Shrine, and we'll hope that it's favored. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.